So again, welcome and aloha. As we settle in, we invite you to place yourselves on mute, but please feel free to turn your cameras on. We'd love to be able to see your faces. Hi, Vera. So we'll give everyone a moment. Silence your speaker, but turn those cameras on. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to be here with us. I'm Ivy Castellanos with the Alzheimer's Association Hawaii chapter. As you know, we're gathering today to talk about lifelong learning and how it supports our health, especially our cognitive health as we get older. So I guess it's kudos to all of us for registering for this webinar, which is certainly an opportunity to learn and to grow. And it's this cognitive stimulation and the social connection that we get from being in community with others, even if it's online. These are certainly examples of things we can do to support our brain health and our overall well-being. So welcome. We have a very special guest speaker and expert in the field joining us today, Dr. Sandra von Doetinchem. Before we begin, a couple of quick housekeeping reminders. First, please note for those of you who just popped in, today's webinar is being recorded. We will share the link to the recording after today's session, and Dr. Von D will also make her slides available to us all. Second, we're going to need everyone's help today with placing yourselves on mute. However, we encourage you to use the chat function today. You know, we want you to say hello, type your questions and comments into the chat. And throughout Dr. Von D's presentation, she is going to be asking, some questions, and there's an interactive component to today's presentation. So please feel free to use that chat space. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce everyone to Dr. Sandra von Doetinchem. Dr. Von D, as she has allowed me to call her, is a lifelong learning researcher and leader in workforce development with a particular focus on older adult learning. She currently serves as a senior scientist and director for labor and talent solutions at Eduworks Corporation. Dr. Von D is leading and conceptualizing transformative AI-enabled projects and research that strategically address the changing labor market and helps shape the future of work. So some exciting stuff. Prior to her role at Eduworks, Dr. Von D was a faculty member at the University of Hawaii at Manoa and chair of the UH Manoa Outreach College's Continuing and Professional Program Department. She was also a public education specialist at UC Berkeley's Osher Learning Institute. She holds a PhD in lifelong learning from the University of Tübingen in Germany. Dr. Von D, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Ivy, and welcome everyone. Aloha to you all, and it's such a pleasure being here today. And thank you so much to the Alzheimer's Association for the possibility of having me here and also sharing my passion for lifelong learning with all of you. And as Ivy has said, so I want to make it as interactive as possible because you all are also experts of learning. And so throughout the presentation, I will ask a couple of questions of your experience with learning and what your motivation to learn and things like that. And so please feel free to jump in, post your answers into the chat, and also generally if questions arise towards the end, we will have a little bit more time to also address those kind of questions and for you to ask anything that remained unclear throughout the presentation. And so this is a little agenda, what we're going to do. So we will have a little welcome as we've started already, and I will introduce a little bit more about what I've been doing and what my motivation for lifelong learning is. Then I will share with all of you what lifelong learning is and its relevance, and then also the cognitive and physical benefits of lifelong learning. And I also hear some echo, by the way. So in case that some of you have not muted your microphone, it would be fantastic to do so. So that again, that we just be able to listen in and hear, but do not hear others echoes. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. And then we are going to share a little bit about cognitive and physical benefits of lifelong learning and how it also fits into the scope of what the Alzheimer's Association is doing, strategies for lifelong learning, and also where I see the future of the field heading. And then again, we will have a lot of Q&A towards the end. And there, towards the end of the presentation, you will see a QR code where you can download the slides. But for those who do not have a smartphone, we're also more than happy to share a PDF with all of you. And when you look into the slides towards the end, there will be a lot of resources, local resources for lifelong learning, places where you can take classes, and just the links directly to those kind of exciting providers here in Hawaii. So as Ivy already kindly shared with all of you, so my background is in lifelong learning, has always been in lifelong learning and continuing education. So I'm originally from Germany, as you might hear with my accent here. So that's where I finished my studies, moved to Hawaii 10 years ago, worked at UC Berkeley, worked at the University of Hawaii after coming from UC Berkeley. And my husband, he's also a professor here at the ETH Manoa, which is exciting. But the reason why I've been in the field of lifelong learning pretty sums it up with a quote of Brian Finson, he is a researcher in lifelong learning and a professor in New Zealand at the University, I think University of Auckland, if I'm not mistaken. And so he said, whether a person is just beginning life or nearing its end, regardless of circumstances, should not affect his or her right of access to education. So, and I think that has always been my why, because lifelong learning, in my opinion, is a right. And I think everyone should have access to lifelong learning and to be cognitively engaged through training throughout their life. And I want to make sure that all of us have the resources and the possibilities and to make my little part here in moving the field forward. So, and it's wonderful, by the way, to see some greetings from Vahiava. Hi, Tracy. Greetings back to you. And so you're more than welcome to introduce yourself also in the chat, where you're from, where you're located. But I also have a question for all of you here. Think about the last time you learned something new that you were really passionate about. How did it make you feel? Share your experience with us in the chat. And I can tell one from my experience. So I learned 2 years ago, I learned pottery. I wanted to learn pottery my whole life. And I finally was able to get into Hawaii's potter skills. And it was so exciting. And I love pottery. But it has been a completely new lifelong learning adventure for me as well. And so, yeah, I'm curious to hear, what did you learn that you were passionate about and how did it make you feel? Wow, we have people joining from Guam. Hi. Hi, Marie. So feel free just to post your answers to my question in the chat. We have maybe a minute or two. So think about what was the last time you learned something new that you were really passionate about. How did it make you feel? And share your experience with us in the chat. Greetings to Maui. Hi, Lyndon. Brigitte, I see that you started learning to play the ukulele and you always felt happy after such a short session. Fantastic. Learning a new instrument. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Deborah, I'm sorry to hear this, but maybe it inspires that session, maybe to start learning something new. And actually you do right now because you joined our webinar. So you're learning something new. And thank you for your time and being here with us. It's really appreciated. John, I learned social work till I graduated. It makes me feel honored as a senior citizen student. Fantastic. Oh, that's so lovely to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Elizabeth, I was in a community-based play about caregiving. It was very therapeutic and fun being an actor and contributor. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Cheryl, I learned how to edit short videos for education, so I wanted to learn more and share with others what I was learning. Fantastic. Short videos perfect. And it's so much fun. And so that's a great way and great new skill to learn, especially in these days, right? So where we are so technology everywhere and videos are posted on Instagram, TikTok, and whatnot. So that's fantastic. Donna, you learned Sanskrit. Wow, that's really difficult and humbling, but also very stimulating and interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. So feel free to just continue sharing your thoughts in the chat, and I will move a little bit on here to get us all on the same page when I talk about lifelong learning. What is actually lifelong learning, and how do we understand it? So there's a definition that I really enjoy that comes from the University of South Africa, and they say lifelong learning is based on the principle that learning is a continuous process that occurs from the cradle to the grave. Lifelong learning stimulates and empowers individuals to acquire and apply skills and abilities required to realize their full potential. And I've highlighted those kind of items that I think are so important here. So lifelong learning is a continuous process. It's stimulating and empowering, and it helps us to really realize our full potential here. So there's different kind of context of learning. So learning can take place in a classroom, in K-12, in higher education, or as a lifelong learner in a classroom where you, for example, obtain a degree. So formal education typically ends with a certificate of completion, with a certification, or with a degree in the classroom. So it's very structured, it's very organized, and it has an outcome towards the end. Non-formal education is also organized. So you have a curriculum and you have a class and whatnot, but it does not typically end with a degree or an outcome. So learning for the joy of learning is typically in the area of non-formal. And then we also have informal learning. So for example, informal learning can be something what we're doing right now here. So you participate, for example, in a webinar, or you're watching TV, or you're reading a book. So for all these different kind of channels, we can learn. And when I mention lifelong learning, I'm looking mostly towards education for mature adult learners here, because lifelong learning, while in the European context, is then often understood as a lifelong kind of encompassing process. Here in the United States, when we talk about lifelong learning, it's mostly focusing on mature adult learning. So, and that's the definition that I will also use for us here to move forward. So learning for mature adults and with mature adults. And the majority of lifelong learning in the context of organized education for and with older adults typically takes place in the area of non-formal learning, because there's a lot of opportunities, for example, for the Osho Lifelong Learning Institutes, for example, that I will also talk a little bit about later on. But they usually do not lead towards a degree or certificate. So again, learning for the joy of learning. But that doesn't necessarily mean, for example, that we have more and more mature adult learners coming back to higher education to obtain a degree, for example, a bachelor's or a master's degree. All of these are wonderful. So, but it's just the majority of organized learning in the area of lifelong learning with older adults that takes place here in non-formal. So the question is, why is lifelong learning important, and why do we actually need to talk about it? And one reason that we're especially seeing right now is we are having a labor shortage in the United States, and but also in European countries as well. So we have a lot of job openings, but we also we do not basically have enough people to fill them. And here in Hawaii, for example, in October of last year, we had 30,000 job openings and only 20,000 unemployed individuals. So we have way more jobs than we actually have people available. And there are different kind of reasons that led to it. So especially throughout the pandemic, we had fewer people that returned to the workforce after the pandemic because they have been in jobs previously where they had low pay, or people also still have health concerns or were affected by the pandemic in their health. And so we had fewer people coming back into the workforce. And then we had a lot of people who retired early during the pandemic because of different kind of circumstances, where they said, okay, I was planning to retire early, or I was planning to retire anyhow, but why don't I do it right now? Or employers were giving out incentives, things like that. And then we had a lot of workers who left jobs to launch their own business. So entrepreneurship increased throughout the pandemic. And at the same time, while we had a lot of people leaving the workforce, millions of new jobs, especially in the technology field, and now with the rise of artificial intelligence, millions of new jobs were added. And another important aspect is that we had fewer people migrating to the United States as it has been prior to the pandemic. Another important reason is also the demographic developments that we're seeing in countries like the United States and Japan, Europe as well. So we're all aging countries. And you can see a chart here that shows our population structure in the United States 100 years in comparison. So the top chart at the beginning, it here shows the population in 1950. The red highlighted area is the female population, and the blue highlighted area is the male population. And the population had some sort of like a pyramid shape. So you can see we had a broad base of young children and adolescents, and only a small tip of older and especially oldest old adults in the population. So the median age in 1950 was around, I would say, 25 to 30 years. 100 years later, the population is projected to change into some sort of like a mushroom shape. So you can see in comparison, the base of small children and adolescents is decreasing, while the top with older and especially oldest old adults is significantly increasing. And of course, in all of that, our median age will increase to about 45 to 50 years, 100 years later. So we have an aging population. And in that kind of regard, in the context that we have a labor shortage and we're also having an aging population, as I mentioned, the importance of mature adult workers will gain relevance. So because of financial reasons, more and more older adults have to continue working. And we also have much more individuals who say, you know, I really enjoyed my work and I want to continue, maybe as a volunteer, or I want to start my own business as an entrepreneur after retirement. But all of that makes lifelong learning and continuous training a necessity, especially because more and more jobs are technologized. And now with AI coming in, so artificial intelligence, AI is the short version of that, it makes continuous learning a necessity for us moving forward. And then also lifelong learning has a lot of cognitive and physical benefits. So I want to share here a little bit about what the Alzheimer's Association is recommending, what are healthy habits for your brain. So movement, protecting the head, especially, for example, when cycling or riding a bicycle, a motorcycle, being smoke-free, frequently controlling your blood pressure, maintaining a healthy diet, so with a lot of veggies, legumes, and nuts and fruits, eating right in general, and getting enough sleep is important, managing diabetes, and then also challenging your mind and staying in school. And I want to point out especially these two things with a little bit more information what the Alzheimer's Association has in mind here. So challenging your mind, what does it mean? Basically means being curious. So participating in webinars like that. So you saw the announcement, said, oh, that's interesting. Okay, why don't I sign up? So that is exactly that curiosity that we need to challenge your mind. So put your brain to work and to do something that you enjoy, or learn new skills. So similar to what you shared with us earlier. So learning ukulele or learning how to edit video clips. So things like that. That is so healthy for the mind. Even if it can be challenging sometimes, learning something new doesn't necessarily always come easy. And I dreaded my pottery class for the first 2 or 3 times because I had no idea what I was doing there. And my pieces were always collapsing and it just didn't work out. And I was so frustrated. But in the end, it worked out. And I was so thankful for that kind of challenge and that I persisted through that. But all of that is extremely helpful to create healthy habits for our brain. And then staying in school. So in general, as longer as we stay in school, it reduces the risk of cognitive decline and dementia. So if possible, going for the highest level of training possible. Of course, that always comes with life circumstances, and it may not always been the possibility that we all thought, okay, that's something that I want to do. However, I think in general, kind of training and signing up for classes that's really, really good and healthy habit that we can do here. So in general, also besides being healthy for the brain, lifelong learning has a bunch of other health and well-being benefits. It helps us to adapt to change and stay up to date. Oh, I'm missing a little E here in that kind of part. And so, yeah, really making sure, okay, as one of you so kindly shared, learning how to edit video clips. It's timely because it's all what we're seeing when we're browsing through social media. So tons of little video clips are here. And so staying up to date with those kind of things, it's wonderful. And it helps us to know what is going on in the world. Lifelong learning also has a positive impact on health, well-being, and independence. It has a positive impact on self-esteem and social attitudes because, as you all shared earlier, okay, how did it make you feel lifelong learning? It felt good. It felt really good. And being proud of yourself that you were able to accomplish something that you suddenly learned and you had no idea of earlier. So probably when one of you started playing the ukulele, you didn't know how to do that, and then you knew it up, and now you can play all these songs, and it makes you wonderful, I bet, right? And so, yeah, growing self-esteem through lifelong learning is definitely another big important factor here. And then another reason is the social group membership can have a positive influence on health through the discussion with others, seeing peers, having an exchange, making new friendships, and that can either be in-person classes, but it can also be an online community where, for example, you're taking an online class and where you're having virtual kind of interaction with your peers. But in general, you're part of a learning community like we are now. So we are a learning community in our little workshop or our little webinar here today. It can prevent isolation through social integration. So through the discussions with others and the learning from each other and also sharing what our experiences are, we are basically part of a bigger group and a part of a community. And that, again, can prevent social isolation. And as I shared earlier, it keeps the brain active. So I want to talk a little bit about our brain. And I'm not a brain scientist, I'm a lifelong learning scientist, but I still, it all is intertwined here. And so I just want to share a little bit about the power of our brain, especially when it comes to neuroplasticity. So maybe some of you heard about neuroplasticity. It basically shows that our brain is resilient. Through neuroplasticity, our brain is constantly rewiring and creating new pathways and new connections. And that is through learning, because we are challenging our brain and we are creating new experiences. And these kind of experiences are always creating these kind of new wires and these new pathways. And that keeps the brain active and it keeps the brain young and it keeps the brain fresh. And the brain is also able to adapt to these kind of new experiences. And another big important aspect of that is, so on the one hand, it improves the brain health, but it can also help our brain to recover from brain injury or trauma through these different kind of networks and pathways that we're creating through neuroplasticity throughout our brain. And again, here, lifelong learning and continuous training and experiences that we're doing to challenge our brain has such an important factor. So what is going on in the area of memory in our brain? So there are two different kind of memory areas that I wanted to focus on today. One of them is the short-term memory and the other one is the long-term. So you might have heard about that. The short-term memory is subject to age-related decline, especially, I think, relatively early on in life, our short-term memory is not functioning to the way how it was used to. So, and that is just a normal kind of thing. I think our brain peaks in short-term memory around the age of 18, and then from there it will decline. And then, however, at the same time, our long-term memory, so the things that we learned in the past, remains relatively stable. Short-term memories in comparison are things that we are basically learning, let's say a couple of minutes ago. So that capacity decreases, but the long-term memory decreases. And I think the long-term memory stays stable. And I think that is a wonderful thing because it means lifelong learning is possible at any kind of age in life. which is fantastic. We all have the capability to learn throughout our life. And memory is influenced by a couple of factors. So through health, educational background, social class, the way how we eat, and also the condition of our sensory systems. And a positive impact here again have exercise, food that is rich in nutrition, restorative sleep, the emotional well-being, and also cognitive training, as I mentioned earlier. So, and as I shared, although learning speed declines and the short-term memory functionality decreases, learning gains are still possible at any kind of time in age. And so there's always been that saying, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks, and that is completely wrong. You can, and because learning just again doesn't stop. So let's talk about a little bit about strategies for lifelong learning, and it's your turn again. So I brought one question here for you. What is one new skill or area of knowledge that you've been wanting to learn more about but haven't had the chance to? So let us know in the chat, and that's also an invitation for the others of you to maybe offer suggestions or resources to help to get started. So again, think about a new skill or area of knowledge that you've been wanting to learn more about, but haven't had the chance to do so far. Marina, I see. I always wanted to learn how to surf, and I got a chance to learn with an old coworker in the class. That's fantastic. Wonderful. Again, think about something that you always wanted to learn, but didn't have the chance to learn so far. Lynn, you want to improve your ukulele skill? Fantastic. That's great. Cheryl, photography. Oh yeah, wonderful. Photography, and especially in Hawaii, we have so many beautiful places that we can take wonderful photography with. Knitting. Elizabeth, I hear you. It's on my bucket list for a long time. I haven't done it so far. My mom showed it to me once, and I was not able to understand how that works, but I still want to learn it at some point. Susan, learning to speak Hawaiian. Fantastic. Wonderful. Floral arranging. Honey, great idea. Deborah, I want to learn my family's genealogy just to get started, and organization skills. Beautiful. That's really fantastic. Archery, Mark. Wow, that's great. Fantastic. Oh, I love seeing all these goals that you have here and something that you wanted to learn tomorrow. Fantastic, Marie. Wow, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Really appreciate it. And so now I want to give you some ideas where you can maybe learn some of these skills that you were hoping to learn at some point. And I see more and more ideas coming in. Decorating cakes, fantastic. So where does lifelong learning take place? So there's a bunch of institutions throughout the United States. So lifelong learning, for example, can take place at the universities and colleges. So for example, a lot of universities or colleges offer the opportunity for guest auditing. So that basically means that mature adult learners can just participate in regular kind of classes, often free of charge, and just with instructor's permission. And I know, for example, that the University of Hawaii here at Manoa has a wonderful guest auditing program, and I will share a little bit about that on one of my next kind of slides. So basically just participating in regular kind of university and college classes. And if you're interested in taking a look at that, just look up your university and search for guest auditing. And I'm sure that you will find great resources here. The universities, or many universities throughout the country, also have so-called lifelong learning institutes. That where I used to work in Berkeley. And it's a membership organization only for learners typically over the age of 50. So people get together for the joy of learning. They take classes, or there are also learning circles, book classes. So it's a membership organization where people get together for the joy of taking classes. And across the United States, I think there's about 127 lifelong learning institutes or OSHA lifelong learning institutes existing. So it's a wonderful resource, often connected to the universities and colleges, and often very, very affordable because they have a membership basis typically where you just pay a flat fee and then you can take a certain kind of amount of classes from there. And on the mainland, there's an organization that is called OASIS. So that is also an important resource. We don't have it here in Hawaii, but in case you're dialing in from the mainland, that is also another resource where they are offering healthy habits classes. They are offering lifelong learning classes in all sorts of areas, from technology to languages and stuff like that. An important area also for lifelong learning are museums and theaters. So I know, for example, here in Hawaii, the Museum of Art also offered classes for mature adult learners. So there's also those kind of resources available. Then faith-based institutions, churches often also offer classes, adult schools here in Hawaii as well. Then there's the senior and community centers that offer classes, and also the health providers. So for example, in case you're insured with Kaiser also has a bunch of classes on a regular kind of basis on healthy practices, healthy living styles, healthy eating, things like that. So these are all lifelong learning resources that are available. And I'm sure that there's also a bunch of other providers, like private providers, that I didn't list here, but there's many, many resources throughout the United States and also here in Hawaii available to learners. So, and those kind of resources typically take place in different kind of areas. So it can take place in the classroom setting, like we were used to in K-12 or maybe higher education. So we attend classes in a physical kind of space. And then, of course, online learning has gained a lot of importance, especially throughout the pandemic, where a lot of providers were suddenly forced to move their classes to online. And then another important resource is still the telephone. So there's a provider on the mainland, and it's called, I think, Martha Lightways, and they're offering hundreds of classes just over the phone. And you can dial in for free, and you can join even museums classes. So there's museum instructors joining those kind of classes and talking about, okay, how would an art exhibition look like? And there's also yoga offered over the telephone. There's technology kind of classes, all sorts of stuff like languages that are just being taught over the telephone, and again, free of charge. And towards the end of the presentation, in case you're interested, I have a bunch of resources, as I mentioned earlier, for those of you who didn't hear my first part of the presentation. And those kind of resources, there are links for you to check out in case you're interested in those kind of things. And then, as I said, here in Hawaii, we have a bunch of wonderful lifelong learning providers. So the OSHA Lifelong Learning Institute at UH Manoa is available, or the Senior Citizen Program, or another name is the Nakupuna Program at UH Manoa as well, where again, mature adults can take classes free of charge through that kind of program. Then we have at UH Manoa Outreach College, where I used to work. So we have non-credit courses for adult learners of all ages, from languages to technology classes, business-related kind of things. So not particular only for mature adults, but the age demographic is very wide and everyone is welcome. And so that's another important resource. The museum, the Honolulu Art Museum, then there's the Senior Center, Nakupuna Makani Center, the Waikiki Community Center. Then we have Kupuna Tech through Lani Kai Pacific. And then also KCC, the Kapiolani Community College, has a specific program for mature adult learners through Kupuna Education. Again, here also a lot of technology classes available, languages, stuff like that. So in general, of those kind of providers, they have a wide variety of course subjects, and the course length and prices depend on the provider. So I would suggest you just check out their website, or maybe give them a call in case you're interested, and so to learn more about their resources. What's come with all of these providers is that they are usually not for credit. However, increasingly more adults take courses for credit at academic institutions, as I mentioned earlier. But the majority of those kind of providers that I shared earlier are usually not for credit, so you don't get a certificate or a degree towards it. So I know also lifelong learning, we sometimes can experience barriers. It can be barriers because we had negative experiences early on in our lives when we were going through K to 12, negative school experiences or in higher education. And that really affected us to say, you know, lifelong learning is not for me. I just don't enjoy it. And then there's other barriers like a lack of confidence in learning abilities. So maybe because a student wasn't encouraged by their instructor to be a good learner. And all of us are good learners, I want to say. We all have different learning styles and we all are good learners. However, others might have made experiences where they're lacking confidence because of experiences they made in the past. Then there are some health reasons that can prevent us from lifelong learning, and especially with physical classroom kind of classes. It might be inaccessible institutions. It might be because just the general kind of health situation or the cognitive health situation doesn't allow to participate in these classes. And of course, while there's a lot of free providers and very affordable providers, however, the financial situation can be a concern. And in general, I want to recommend and suggest that I know of a lot of, especially from the OSHA Lifelong Learning Institutes, many institutions even offer scholarships and they offer financial support for those who have the financial need and would otherwise not be able to attend. So again, lots of private, lots of free opportunities, but again, financial situation can be a barrier, absolutely. Through again high course fees, or even there's inconvenient course schedules. So maybe you have obligations in your private life or your caregiver or not, and you just cannot attend these courses because the course schedule just doesn't align with your personal schedule. Absolutely, it's a barrier. Or inaccessible location. Maybe you're sitting in a wheelchair and they don't have a ramp. So stuff like that. So we have a lot of barriers to lifelong learning, or as I mentioned here, ineffective marketing. And that happened to me in the past. I did not know that those kind of resources existed because they didn't do marketing. They didn't do outreach. Maybe they don't have a website. So it's not something that is a barrier from us, but it's more a barrier from the institution that they are not doing enough outreach to really showcase the wonderful work that they are doing. And so, and I made a quick distinction here. So the first four bullet points are personal kind of barriers that we are experiencing. And then the other four barriers are institutional kind of barriers that are set by the institutions and their administration, for example, that can create barriers to lifelong learning. Another important barrier, especially that came up throughout the pandemic, is the digital divide. So a digital divide basically shows that the population is not equally, that we do not have equal access to digital resources. And I want to share a couple of statistics here. So 7% of the overall complete US adult population, so not only mature adults, overall, over the whole US population do not use the internet, 7%. And then 25% of mature adults over the age of 65 do not access the internet because of different kind of things like financial reasons or do not know how to access the internet. And the access to the internet also depends heavily on the income. So 43% of those with a yearly income of less than $30,000 do not have broadband internet access at home. And 41% of those with a high school or less do not have home broadband. And then also it depends heavily on those with disabilities. So 38% of individuals with a disability do not own a computer device. And in comparison, 19% for those without a disability. So what we are basically seeing here that millions of older adults cannot connect through digital online platforms. So especially, again, another barrier here are online classes for millions of older adults throughout the United States. So now it's your turn again. I have one more question for you. So since we talked about barriers, so what are some challenges you have faced when incorporating lifelong learning into your daily life? How did you overcome them, or what strategies have you found to be helpful? So what are your challenges that you faced when incorporating lifelong learning in your daily life, and how did you overcome them? wait just to share chat. Any challenges you experienced? How did you overcome them? And I can share a couple of things here from my perspective. So it could be, for example, overcoming barriers. So as I mentioned earlier, maybe do some research if tuition support is offered, or explore free learning resources. So Front Porch, well connected, has a wonderful availability of online courses that are completely free of charge. And then checking out alternative distance education programs. So maybe there's something available in case you cannot go to the physical kind of classroom themselves. Maybe check if there's some online or telephone courses that are of interest to you. Teaming up with a friend, because that makes things much easier. With my pottery class, I went with my friend because that was way, way more fun to do. Or maybe create and join a private learning circle. So maybe there's a book club in your area in case you like to read. Or if there's no book club, maybe you have some other friends who are currently reading the same book and say, hey, you know, how about we just team up and just share what we've read recently. And I did that with my friends because we all started by coincidence reading the same book. And we said, you know, let's get together over dinner and just talk about what we've learned in that book. And it was so much fun. And then also in general, if you're not sure where to start, it's always great to seek some advice from others. And I'm also seeing here again some fabulous feedbacks. I'm seeing here staying focused on priorities, not getting distracted or forgetful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Deborah. I really appreciate that feedback. And incorporating lunch and learns. Wonderful. Yeah, getting out and move lunches. Wonderful ideas. And Tracy, I see I'm a full-time caregiver for my mother-in-law. So the online seminars allow me to leave the house in a virtual way. Thank you. So that's wonderful. And thank you for joining us and taking on these kind of opportunities to learn virtually while your time doesn't allow to come to physical kind of classroom. So really appreciate that. Thank you so much for that great feedback. And so the question now is, okay, what does the future have? And I don't know exactly, but I have some ideas. So in general, I think what we will see in the area of lifelong learning is we will see an increased importance of lifelong learning in the future of work because more people need to upskill and reskill, especially with the rise of AI and technology in the workforce. And they need to also adapt to their careers. So maybe those kind of skills they learned in the past are no longer current. So there might be more career transitions and career changes where lifelong learning gets importance. And we will also see more increased enrollment from non-traditional learners, so mature adults coming to higher education because we have an aging population. So the traditional student, because we have younger students, we have younger individuals and fewer younger individuals in our population, will change the way how we see the traditional student, what the typical kind of age will be. And then, of course, in general, and that will also have an effect on lifelong learning, technology continues to advance and increase access to lifelong learning. So through smart home devices that are available or self-driving cars. So maybe individuals cannot drive their cars to a lifelong learning provider anymore, but maybe they have the possibility at some point to have I hear some background and some feedback. So just a reminder, please mute your mic if you maybe just joined us right now. So thank you so much, appreciate it. And you might have heard about augmented reality. So it's basically virtual reality and virtual kind of avatars that will maybe join a class, a virtual kind of class on behalf of you. So things like that are possible in the sphere of lifelong learning in the future. And then, of course, artificial intelligence. So artificial AI instructors, for example, will very likely continue or will very likely come in lifelong learning. In general, learning will get much more personalized because through online, it will be available anywhere and anytime. We will have access to a wide range of subject and learning modalities because things are online. So we can access a broad variety of providers throughout the United States by phone, by internet, or when we were maybe traveling, possibility just to drop into classes here and there. So we have bigger kind of variety of providers than we had in the past without the internet available. And then also learners can be creators of their own learning experience by choosing these kind of subjects, choosing the modality that works for them, also the time that works for them. There's also asynchronous online where you can just join classes that are not taking place at a specific kind of time like we do now, but maybe when you access your recording afterwards. That's asynchronous learning. So your learners will increasingly get creators of their own learning experience. And then also lifelong learning will play an active role in active aging, and there will be an increased focus on promoting mental and physical health, and also the social connectiveness here through lifelong learning will be an important aspect for us moving forward in lifelong learning. All right, and that basically concludes everything that I have here. So you will see, you see here a fancy kind of QR code, and if you open up your phone into the photo mode and you just scan that, you will have access immediately to the slides that I just presented in case you're interested to take a look. And as I said, when you scroll through the slides towards the end, you will find links from all these different kind of resources that I shared. So you may want to use your phone right now to access it, but for those of you who don't want to do it right now or you don't have a smartphone, we will also share a PDF of the slides with you. And now we have time for questions. So Ivy, I'm not sure if questions came in while I was talking, and so if you maybe want to guide us through the Q&A, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, you know, I think everyone was providing their comments and responses to questions, and they've been really insightful. I've gotten some great ideas kind of scrolling through that. I am not seeing, unless I'm missing something, any questions per se. But I wonder, Dr. Vondi, I was reading and really hearing kind of the challenge or the barrier in terms of time, right? Everyone is so busy, particularly for folks that are caregiving. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on either opportunities or strategies, you know, for folks that might be in these type of situations where it's sort of really bite-sized, if you will, kind of opportunities for learning and engagement?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ivy. And I think bite-sized is probably the key here. So because, I mean, especially for caregivers who have to be attentive with their loved ones and cannot be a step away for 1 or 2 hours to take kind of classes. So I think generally kind of smaller webinars, for example, would be a possibility. So maybe for those who didn't have the chance to join us today and see the recording, possibility could always be, for example, to pause the recording, come back to it whenever the time is convenient. And then I think with these kind of telephone topics that I mentioned earlier, I think they actually have classes, if I'm not mistaken, that are in the kind of 30 minutes, 45 minutes kind of range. And I think another great resource is YouTube. So for those of you who may not have access to YouTube, so it's basically a platform with tons of videos and from all sorts of things, so from music, but there's also a lot of resources there when it comes to, okay, how do I operate my new kind of smartphone that I got, or I don't know how to, so for example, my husband is using YouTube to repair his car all the time. So we have a 1954 classic car, and YouTube is basically his university to learn it there. So, but these are often very small kind of videos that can be 5 to 10 minutes. So bite-sized learning can also take place through resources like that. So I think asynchronous learning, probably bite-sized, will be the best.
Yeah, good point. There were some questions that just came through in the chat. One is, do you have suggestions for guides to help someone make up a research plan, resources, contacts, etc.?
That's a great question, Deborah, and thank you for asking that. So to make a research plan, and you may want to. What I always like to do is I like to brainstorm for myself. So I usually take a white kind of just a white paper and a pen, and just to brainstorm and write down some ideas that come to mind. So maybe you want to ask yourself, okay, what is the research you're planning to do in terms of finding what is important for you to find, or what makes a good lifelong learner for you. So you may want to write down, okay, possibility for online, or possibility for in-person, or the finances must be this and this. So maybe write down what is important for you. And then I would recommend maybe look through the slides that I shared. So, and I can show you really quickly what I have in mind here. So when you go through here, towards the end, you will see all these different kind of links. So you may just want to take a look at the slides once we're done and they have been shared with you, and click through these kind of links. And typically the websites or the providers also have a contact kind of list, and just reach out. So whatever feels better for you, it could maybe just be an email, or it can be even giving them a phone call. But I think what I would definitely recommend, find first for you what makes you happy in lifelong learning and what is a good provider for you, and then just browse from there and see what other offerings that they can provide here, and just giving them a call or write them an email. And I know that from my own experience, they are very, very responsive to that. So Cheryl, I see you're searching for the OSHA Lifelong Learning Institutes. Yeah, that's they are for typically age of 50 or beyond. Exactly, that's what it is. So there's some differences between some OLLIs. I've heard from some OLLIs that they say, okay, it's for people over the age of 55. Others say it's 50. There's some who even say, okay, it's for 45. But they just want to make sure intended that it's a peer community where people in a similar kind of age range might or feel welcome. So it's a learning community for mature adult learners. Yeah, and again, it's called OSHA Lifelong Learning Institutes, or the OLLIs. And then, are there subjects that improve neuroplasticity, languages, physical sports, archery? I would say from everything that I've learned, anything that is challenging the brain, and it can be anything where you feel that is challenging you. So maybe for you, learning a new language will challenge your brain. For others, it's maybe saying, okay, there's a new sport like archery that you wanted to learn. And I think learning in general is good for neuroplasticity and for the ability of the brain to rewire. And I think in general, so let's say you're learning a new language, I think learning something completely from the get-go is important. And I had someone say that it's especially important for the brain that learning something that is new, that is challenging, and also creates variety in what you've done before. So maybe you had languages before and you have a really good language understanding, and learning languages comes to you super, super easily. Maybe you want to learn something that comes a little less easily for you. So again, maybe a certain kind of sport or a new dance practice. So the variety in what you're learning and the challenging and the novelty of what you're learning is important here. Right. Are there any other questions?
Dr. Von B, would you be able to speak to, you really, I think, kind of clarified and validated the fact that, old dogs can learn new tricks, right? I think that was helpful. When someone has Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, can you maybe speak to how learning might be a little bit different in that individual, or the same?
Yeah, no, I think that is a great question. So with individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, I mean, the especially the short-term memory significantly decreases. However, there's been a lot of evidence and research around that people with dementia still have possibility to remember a certain song, or they might remember some triggers here and there from the past, a certain kind of smell or whatnot. So there's a certain factor of the long-term memory that still is accessible to individuals with dementia. And there has been some initiatives from different kind of museums on the mainland. So I think the museum in Chicago, is it the art school? They have been offering museum classes for individuals with dementia. So, and they called it, for example, learning in the moment. So it's more about experiencing something new or something artful or whatnot right in that moment, instead of having the long-term kind of outcome. Yeah, art in the moment, I think, is one of the names. So I think with individuals with dementia and Alzheimer's disease, we just have to rethink here. Necessarily, it's not always important to learn something for the long kind of aspect, but maybe being right in the moment and enjoying art or another learning experience can be extremely beneficial at the same time. And as I said, maybe look it up in case you're interested. Again, art in the moment, lifelong learning for the art museums for people with dementia has been quite a big kind of move that happened on the mainland. I don't think that something like that this exists here in Hawaii, but definitely again on the mainland. And then I see a question about Distance Art School in addition to Chicago Art Museum. I think the Front Porch resource, and also I think Martha Lifeways, the telephone topics. As far as I know, I think they are collaborating with museums across the United States, and that they have art instructors coming in and sharing their resources over the internet. And I would recommend just to give them a try and check out Front Porch and Martha Lifeway. Again, look through the resources towards the end of the of my slides, and maybe there's something that you think is inspiring and something new, artful that you want to learn here. Brigitte, thank you so much. Vielen Dank. Yeah, thank you. Vielen Dank means thank you in German. So thank you so much, Brigitte. Appreciate it. So learning a new language. Like any other last minute questions?
Well, thank you all so much for your time today and for your participation. It was great, to be able to kind of interact via the chat and do some sharing that way. So thank you, everyone. A big mahalo, of course, to Dr. Von D, for sharing all of this this knowledge and this great body of research around lifelong learning and making us aware of all of the resources that are available to us. If I can just share, a little bit about what we do at the Alzheimer's Association as we get ready to leave today. One of the pillars of our work is around raising awareness and providing care and support to people living with Alzheimer's and all types of dementia, as well as supporting caregivers. So what's listed here are some of the programs and support services that we offer. Everything that we do is offered at no cost. And the goal is really to help families navigate the uncertainty and complexity and difficulty of dementia and caregiving. So one of the things we offer is something called care consultations. These are facilitated by trained staff. This can take place here at our office, virtually, as well as over the phone. So, this can simply be a conversation if someone needs support, but we, oftentimes will just sit with the person or family and get a sense of what their needs are, and help provide some direction in terms of resources and support, and help come up with a plan to help kind of navigate that journey. These care consultations are also done through our 24-hour helpline, which is listed there. 800-272-3900. That's available, around the clock at any time for questions and support. One of the other things that we do is we offer caregiver support groups. So these are statewide, we have them on each of the islands. We gather in person as well as virtually. And it's really just a space for caregivers to come together and connect and share their experiences and kind of just glean insight and support from one another. We also offer, pretty comprehensive suite of education programs and caregiver trainings. We do in-services as well. So, the topics kind of range from just, the basics of dementia, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, to things like legal and financial planning. And we also, will partner and collaborate with experts in the field like Dr. Von D to talk about, other issues around brain health and things that affect caregivers. In March of every year, we have an annual caregiver conference. So this year, it's going to be on Saturday, March 30th at the Blaisdell Pikake Room. We are featuring Tipa Snow, so a lot of excitement around, hearing from Tipa Snow and her positive approach to care team. All of our in-person seats are it's full, unfortunately, but lots of room virtually for folks to join. So we will, share this information and additional details in our follow-up email. But, we'll provide our contact information. Folks can reach us through our helpline at our chapter office, as well as at our website at alz.org/Hawaii. I am going to turn it back to you, Dr. Bondi, for any parting words. But again, thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Dr. Bondi.
Thank you so much, Ivy. And I just want to say a huge mahalo to all of you for being here with us today. And I so enjoyed seeing your participation in the chat and all these great ideas you have about lifelong learning. And hopefully you found them to be also a little inspiring, and maybe it sparked some ideas to come back to some ideas of things you always wanted to learn. And so maybe some of these resources again that are available here in the slides will maybe make that kind of leap to learn those kind of skills you wanted to do. And again, I learned so much from all of you through glimpsing through the chat, and it has been absolutely wonderful. And again, a huge mahalo also for the Alzheimer's Association for having me here today and sharing a little bit about lifelong learning. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Mahalo, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.